So we have talked quite a bit about different forms of the deity Avalokiteshvara, and for the most part these forms have all been iconic meaning that they're fixed in appearance, they're fixed in how they're presented textually, and how the practitioner is instructed to meditate upon that form of Lokeshvara. But we haven't really talked about the non-iconic forms, and there's really not that many that fit into any kind of a classification system. Now, non-iconic forms of Lokeshvara or any deity means that they're really coming out of the sutra tradition. They're not intended to be a static figure. They're actually a dynamic figure in terms of the description of the figure and how the artist has freedom to depict that figure. Just according to their own regional style, culture, time period, whatever their clothing customs are, their jewelry, their physical aesthetics, body aesthetics for height, shortness, width. All of that is all local artistic convention. But in terms of non-iconic forms of Lokeshvara, we do have one that stands out. It stands out because of the quantity of objects that we have in private collections and museums and monasteries and temples around the world. And that figure is actually called a Padmapani. Padmapani is really often just taken to mean a variant name, an epithet of Avalokiteshvara. Padma meaning the flower, the lotus flower, pani holding, similar to Vajrapani, the holder of the Vajra, Vajrapani. Then we have Padmapani. But this term Padmapani is not all that common. We find it a little bit in India, and then we find it very generically in Nepal. And in Nepal, it's very much used as just a reference to Avalokiteshvara. So you could say Lokeshvara, Avalokita, Lokanatha, Mahakarunika, or you could say Padmapani. Now, a problem with this is we really don't have this term Padmapani used really in Tibet and in Tibetan Buddhism, which is also Mongolian and Northern Chinese Buddhism. So really, this any reference to a Padmapani really has to be targeted towards Nepal and possibly North India, but not Tibet. Also, with this this term Padmapani, it's really used in reference to sculpture, never to painting. Now, in terms of visual description, then it can be difficult to come up with, well, what is this Padmapani that's being referred to? In Nepal, again, it can be used for any form of Lokeshvara, but textually we do find that the reference is being made to a peaceful male deity, one face, two arms. Remember, the figures coming out of the Sutra Yana tradition of Buddhism, they're all one face, two armed, especially the bodhisattvas. So we're looking at a form of Avalokiteshvara, peaceful in appearance, but standing. Now, how do we know it's Avalokiteshvara? Well, we know because there are certain attributes. There's really three attributes. We're looking for an Amitabha that's represented in the crown above the head of Lokeshvara, usually right on the very front. And then we're looking for a deer skin, a Krishnasara, that is draped over the left shoulder, the proper left shoulder. And then we're looking for the left hand holding the stem of a flower blossom. Now, the flower blossom is usually very large and often front-facing. That means the flower blossom is not facing upwards. It's turned like a sunflower and facing towards the viewer. So it's facing outward from the body of Padmapani. And it's usually very large, much larger than the flowers that might be used for Tara or for Maitreya or for Manjushri holding a sword and book. So the lotus flower is usually large. So those are the key attributes to recognize the figure in the first place as a Avalokiteshvara. But secondly, he should be standing, and we find this from a few Nepalese ritual texts where it stipulates that the Padmapani is a standing figure, and this is what we find. We find sculpture from India and Nepal where he's standing, and these can properly be called and identified as a Padmapani Lokeshvara sculpture. We have no examples of any sculpture or paintings where a Padmapani is seated. All of these figures that we have all have different characteristics in terms of the gestures, in terms of the posture. They're very different, and they're not attested to in texts that we have been able to find. So the reason that this Padmapani is important is really from an art history point of view, because there is just so much, there's so many objects that are available to see, and many of them are extremely fine in terms of workmanship, craftsmanship, very, very fine examples of sculptural art from northern India, Nepal, and elsewhere in the Himalayas.